Okay, good morning, Team Impact. Just getting started on a Thursday morning. We're going to continue on the coordinate plane. Remember, we talked about the coordinate plane yesterday. We talked about this being X and this being Y, and that's the point of origin, right? And this is actually the first quadrant, and we're just dealing with the first quadrant right now. So, uh, anyway, let's get started. Today, we're going to be taking data from the graph and filling it in the table and then answering some questions. So we're just going to kind of work backwards here. Um, anyway, Margaret is traveling on a family vacation across the country. Use the given information to go. All right, so what we're going to do is figure out the process and by looking at the graph. So when I look at the graph, if I work 0 and 0, that's where that is. All right, we go 0 miles. All right, but let's start with 1. 1 is 50 miles, right? 2 is 100 miles, right? 3 is, I'm starting to see the pattern. We're counting by 50s, right? So let's just go ahead and um, fill that in, right? Now, what is our process? How are we getting from X to Y? Okay. Well, it looks like we're multiplying it by 50 because 1 times 50 is that, 2 times 50 is that, 3 times 50, 4, and go ahead and fill those in because that repetition is good for your mind, okay? And we end up with 7 times 50, which is 350, okay? So what we're doing here is taking the data from our graph and plugging in the numbers. Now, I guess I should fill in this to get that. The last thing I'm going to do is write my equation before I answer these questions. So y is going to equal, looks like 50x, 50x, right? Number 1, what is the ratio of the number of hours to the number of miles? Hours to miles, 1 to 50, 1 to 50. And we always want to write that simplified, right? How many hours will it take to travel 300 miles? Well, clearly we have that right here in our graph. We could look here. We could go over to 300 and come down. We would get 6. It's 6 hours, right? Number 3, if this continued with the same ratio, then how many miles would be traveled in 15 hours? Well, it would just be 15, all right? 15 times 50, right? 15 times 50. And that's something that, you may need a calculator for. You may not. It's one of those deals. I guess it's how you feel that day. But anyway, 15 times 50 is 750, right? 750 miles. Okay. All right, let's move on. What does the ordered pair of 9, 450 represent? 9, 450. Well, the 9 would represent the 9 hours, right? That she will travel. And the 450 is the miles. Just interpreting some data today. If you were given a verbal description instead, explain how you would graph the situation. So, verbal description is just putting in words. I could write an equation and then complete the table and determine the ordered pairs to plot. Okay, so if you were given the verbal description instead, all right, this, then I would write that. That's all. So I'm not real worried about that question. Though. All right, let's flip it over and let's continue on. Using the ratio of 7 to 5, complete the table below. 7 to 5. So I'm going to write that down right now. 7 to 5. Okay. And what I have to do here, okay, is I have to construct intervals on this. I have to identify X and Y. So this is a little bit more involved. All right. All right. So I know my X coordinates are going to be intervals of 7, right? So what I'm going to do is write 7. This would be 14, but I'm just going to skip it and write 21. All right. That way I can be a little cleaner here. right? So 28, and this would be 35. The next one plus 7 would be 42, so that's 49. Okay, and then let's go one more, skip one and get to 63. So what we did on the x-axis is we counted by an interval of 7, 7, 14, 21, all right, 28, 35, and so on. Now, if I look at my y-axis, the y is the interval of 5. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing on the y-axis. I'm going to count by 5. 5, 10, 15. I'm just going to not write that number down. 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. You getting the idea now? Okay. So what we've done so far is get our interval for x, get our interval for y. Now, I'm going to finish out my table. I'm going to scale it up, all right? So this is 7 times 1 times 5. Times 2 is 14 and 10. Times 3 is 21 and 15. Times 4 is 28 and 20. Times 5 is 35 and 25. So again, just scaling it up, times 1, times 2, times 3, times 4, times 5. Okay? All right, now let's look at the next part. Using the information above, set up and solve a proportion to determine the value of y when x is 49. Okay. So what is a proportion? A proportion is two equal ratios. So using the above information, set up a proportion. All right, no problem. Well, my first ratio in my proportion is 7 to 5, right? But then they want to know, all right, what is the value of y, all right? So y would be the bottom number, when x is 49. Now, once we've done that, we clearly can see that we have to factor it up or scale it up by a factor of 7. So this times 7 was that, and this times 7 is 35. Okay? And our factor was 7. So proportion is just really two equal ratios. That's all. Okay, that was a good question. Number 6 gave us a lot of information. We had to kind of infer a lot of things there. Let's move on to number 7. And number 7 reads, the relationship between the number of hours traveled and the number of miles traveled on a family road trip is graphed below. So again, I always like to write this in, x and y, right? Origin, if you wanted to do that. Here's the time, here's the number of miles, okay? What is the ratio of hours to miles? Hours to miles. So when we look at this, all right, we want to write the original ratio down. We're going to start with 1. So it's hours is 1 to 50. 1 to 50. Makes sense? Letter B, how many miles could the family travel in a period of 12 hours? Okay, well, here's 9. 9 hours, we're going 450. And it looks like we're scaling it up by 50s here, right? So if I just extrapolated this out, 10 would be here. 11 would be what? 550, and 12 would be 600. You could just carry that scale out, right? And you would see that it is 600 miles, 600 miles, all right? Or we could just figure out what? We could figure out the equation, couldn't we, right? We could also say y equals, well, 50x, right? We're multiplying these numbers by 50 to get to that. So 50 times 12 is 600. So either way works. A lot of people like to carry it out. This is the algebraic way to look at it. How many hours will it take the family to travel 700 miles? Okay, 700 miles. So let's look at this a little closer. I'm going to start with my formula, my equation. Y equals 50x. I have y. That's the amount traveled. That was 700 equals 50x. So to figure out what the value of x is, I'm going to divide 700 by 50. And it's just a basic one-step equation. And when I plug that into my calculator, I clearly get 14 miles. 14 miles. Because 700 divided by 50 is 14 hours. Didn't label that right, hours. Okay? So that equation, that equation can help us go forward and work backwards to it. All right, good stuff today. I'm enjoying this lesson. I think it's better than yesterday's. The relationship between the number of bread loaves and the cost of loaves is shown. Graph the ratio and then answer the questions below. Okay. So they've already set it all up for us. Again, there's X, there's Y. Here, if you want to look at it this way, this is X and that's Y. So our first ordered pair is 2 to 5. We're going to slide that in right there. Okay. And the next one is 4 to 10. Right above that, probably somewhere in there. We're guesstimating there. 6 to 15 would be right there. That's an intersection. That's easy. And then 8 to 20. We're going to go over 8 up to 20, right below 21. And there it is. There's our line. It is linear, right? It's linear. Okay. And let's take a peek at these questions. How much would 12 loaves of bread cost? Okay. Again, we could carry this out or we could figure out what the equation is. All right. So that's what I want to do. Y equals. Well, when I look at this, all right, when I look at this, I see that my order pair is 2 to 5, 4 to there, 6 to 10, 6 to 15. So what I would do is I would take 15, okay, and I'm going to grab my calculator. I'm going to grab it here. All right, I would take 15, have a clean number, and divide it by 6. So 15 divided by 6 is 2.5. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us, and I'll put that light on for you, it tells us that y will equal 2.5x. So 2.5 times any of these numbers will give us the other value, okay? So now, if I want to know about 12 loaves, 12 times 2.5, and let's grab our calculator. 12 times 2.5 is 30. So that to me is the easiest way to do it. And we're going to have $30, right? That's the cost, okay? So it's so much easier once you figure out this equation. If Annie has 47.50, then how many loaves can she have? All right, well, let's go back to our formula, our equation. Y equals 2.5x. I have the money. That's the Y value. So if we put $47.50 equals 2.5x. So to figure out this, I have to work backwards. And the opposite of multiplication is division. So let's do it. 47.50 divided by, right? What do we have here? 2.5. And our value is going to be what? 19 what? 19 loaves. Right? So good stuff today. Good stuff. And good lesson. If you flip the page, you'll be able to look at the next page as our homework. And we can go from there. Have a good day.